Hello everyone, this is Prussian Prince with a 30-minute time-lapse video of Dividing the Spoils, a multiplayer event organized by Paradox Interactive for Imperator Rome. Yes, I call it Imperator Rome because I think it sounds cooler than just calling it Imperator, you know? Imperator, you know, the good old way of saying it. Anyway, I am very thankful that I got invited to this event, and I do hope that there will be more events like this one in the future. I am so happy also that plenty of old friends were part of it, and I made new ones as well. At least I would like to think that I did. Now, as for the event setup, well, essentially there were 4 teams in the game, and each team had 4 players. So that adds up to about 16 players. Well, not about 16 players actually, exactly 16 players. Alliances were allowed to shift only after 30 in-game years had passed, so essentially from 450 AUC, which is the starting date, all the way to 480 AUC. That's when you were basically locked in your desired, well, not desired, but alliance that you started out as, but you could change your alliance after that. As for my team, well, I was part of the German Hordes team, which included Marbazier, Cringer, and Potato McWhiskey. To be exact, I was in command of Varinia, which starts around the Brandenburgian area or so, you know, like theoretically we also have Berlin. So maybe that is why they put me here, you know, because Prussian Prince, you know, Berlin, Prussia-ish area, right? So it's pretty good, right? They fit me pretty well, I think, here. I guess they really thought about where to put me. I think, because they did the same with the other players, right? Like you have Heir of Carthage, who is on Carthage, and you have Prince of Macedon, who was on Macedon, right? So I guess they really actually thought about where to put everyone. Anyway, for my teammates, well, to my west, we had Cringer on Chauchia or Chauchia, I don't know, I'm not sure. To my east, there was Potato on Bastarnia, and Marbazir all the way up to, well, what is now South Sweden, but basically in game it is Burgundia. Now, we were all migratory tribes, which basically have very different mechanics compared to other government types. What are all these different mechanics? Well, for starters, well, basically, as migratory tribes, we get a specific amount of clan retinues. Essentially troops that we don't have to pay for. Basically, they're free and don't cost us any manpower to reinforce. So I just noticed that I'm saying basically like a million times already. That's okay. Hope you don't mind. Yeah. Also, the kicker here is that they are commanded by a clan chief, those clan retinue stacks. So, also, the issue is that if his loyalty is to drop, well, you are potentially going to have some issues then. His loyalty drops too low, you know, below a certain point, he becomes disloyal, so you'd be unable to command his troops, which would be unfortunate. Like, he may or may not decide what to do, but at that point, he acts independently of your orders. Now, ultimately, he may even start a revolt. Hopefully you won't have to go through that, because it's pretty tough to deal with revolts. And time consuming, and manpower consuming, and you know, what other issues you may have. Now, fortunately, there are ways to make sure that you keep your clan chiefs under control. Probably the easiest way to do this is by increasing wages in the economy tab. Though you should only do this if you have a strong economy, because if you don't, you're gonna go bankrupt, and going bankrupt I mean, it can be bad in this game. It's not the end of the world, but you do lose a lot. Like, you can get some negative events where, you know, you lose stability and that sort of stuff. So you still do not want to go into a deficit in terms of your money, gold, I suppose you can call it. So yeah, that is why you still don't want to do that. There are other more, well, generally better ways to do this, which is bribing. You can bribe your clan chiefs, but at the end of the day, that actually costs a lot of monarch points if you keep doing it, so it's not really ideal. Just a short-term solution, I suppose. But a very good way of keeping their loyalty up, however, is to have them fight and hold triumphs after they win battles. So what I mean by that is once your clan chiefs, or clan retinues to speak, once they win combat, what that does is it allows you to right click on the clan chief's portrait and hold a triumph. Now, what does that do? Well, as you can imagine, it gives them a lot of loyalty, which is pretty good. You should do it. That still ends up costing some monarch points, I believe, so it's not great, but it is better than bribing, like a lot better. And besides that, there are also some events with choices that increase the loyalty of your clan chiefs. And I believe there are some laws as well that affect happiness and such, so I have to look for them. But I'm not 100% sure on the law stuff. But I'm sure there are other modifiers as well. Oh, and also, one other thing about bribing. There is potential for characters to have the righteous trait, which means that you won't be able to bribe them. So keep that in mind. You can also make friends with the clan chiefs. That will help, but you know, it's also potentially going to cost money or monarch points. It just really depends at that point. But making friends can be a good way of increasing loyalty as well, if you need to. Now, the other interesting mechanic for tribes, specifically migratory tribes, is well, migrating. They can lift the pops from owned cities, essentially making those cities uncolonized, and settle where there is uncolonized land. This gives migratory tribes a lot of freedom in terms of expansion, and for instance, they must settle close to another nation, then declare war on it, using the settled territory as a base of operations, because essentially your clan retinues will only reinforce in your own territory. There's also a downside to migrating, however, as it does cost 100 oratory power, so it can be quite an investment. There is yet another downside, which is that if you have any freemen or citizens migrating, well, sadly for you, those guys will demote to tribesmen once they are settled. And there is yet another limitation, which is that you need at least the same amount of migrant pops to the amount of pops currently residing in the uncolonized city that you want to settle in. Important to note, however, is that you cannot migrate while at war. However, you can settle then. So as another tactic, you can actually settle on cities of other nations you're at war with. And basically, how you do that is you start migrating before you declare war, and then just have the migrant pops ready to settle in when after you've secured the area, right? So that can be a good way of doing it also, because again, migrant pops can settle not just in uncolonized cities, but also where on your enemies' territories. So that can be quite good also to keep in mind. We're also, of course, the other teams. There were 3 other teams besides our German Hordes team. As I mentioned, there are a total of 4 teams. Each team has 4 players, so 16 players in total. Now, the other 3 teams were the Mediterranean Alliance, which had Lord Pravus on Epirus, Benjamin Magnus on Sparta, Enigmatic Rose on Syracuse, and Feedback Gaming on Rome. So that's the Mediterranean Alliance. Now we have the, well, we also had the Diadochi with the Many a True Nerd on Egypt, Surreal Beliefs on Seleucid Empire, or Seleucid, not Seleucids, as Christo called it, and a lot of people made fun of him for that, so I don't want to call it the same way. I'm just gonna call it Seleucids, you know, that's probably easier for me. We also had Prince of Macedon on Macedon and Aldrahil on Thrace. That's the Diadochi, let's call it Diadochi, right? Then we had the contenders, starting off with Spiffing Brit on Phrygia, Heir of Carthage on Carthage, surprise, surprise, Prince of Macedon on Macedon, there's the Diadochi, and on contenders you have Heir of Carthage on Carthage, so names are matching, very cool. Solar Gamer on Moria, which is essentially India, Shenrir on Armenia. Now, how did this game start, actually? Well, if you think about it, well, you've already seen it in the video, I think, but what I did is I took my nation to the left, which was a little bit annoying to deal with, and then I attacked, I believe it was Sinonia to the south of me with my friend Potato's assistance. Again, Potato McQuisky is on Bastarnia. We had a very tough time because at that point we didn't really realize how hard the AI is to beat. Like, if you're a barbarian and he's also a barbarian, right? Because you basically have the same troops, and retinues, you know, like, you cannot reinforce your retinues in his land because it's not your territory. Retinues only reinforce in your territory, and of course, since you're attacking him, your troops will actually have will be suffering from attrition in enemy lands, while his troops won't, because he's defending and he is reinforcing his retinues, right? Because he's in his own territory, and retinues cost no money, and retinues cost no manpower to reinforce. So as you can see, that is one way to have very long wars. If you're playing a barbarian, make sure you are as cost effective as possible and keep attacking very fast so you have time to siege and, you know, win big victories. Now, of course, this wasn't the case here. I actually lost a lot of troops while we were doing that, and I got wiped a few times, I think, and Potato had a lot of issues too. There was also another big issue this war. We were actually separated, both me and Potato, so none of us could actually, well, we couldn't concentrate our forces together to come in from one side into the enemy, right? So that was really bad for us, because that meant, like, we fight, everyone fought like one-on-one, right? And so that's a draw, potentially, at best. So yeah, that was an issue. But eventually we did end up finally finishing off Sinonia, as you can clearly see there. But there was another issue. At this point, I believe that, we ran into the issue of there being a Burgundian revolt for Marbazir. And I think his clan chief actually rolled as righteous, so he could not bribe his clan chief, which was very, very sad for him indeed. But thankfully for him, well, not thankfully for him, I tried to save him, but I couldn't really get there in time, and his nation was in a pretty bad spot as well. So that was really a tough loss for us. Also worked a little bit weird, the revolt system. I mean, it was very, very long war. Like, there doesn't seem to be a way to stop the revolts that fast, which maybe will end up being changed in the future. I mean, he was basically in that war for, I don't know, at least half an hour to an hour, right? On speed 3. So it was taking a very long time to finish that revolt. But eventually, basically, he asked to be switched to another country. So he did get another country, Focia, which, by the way, was an issue for me because Fossia is Swebi culture, and in this game from day one, I had one idea, like something I wanted to execute, which is the decision called Unite Swabia. What that gives you is a lot of nice bonuses, actually, but unfortunately, if there's another Swebi nation on the map, Swebi culture, that is, you cannot do it. So, I mean, Marbazir became a Swebi nation, so that was impossible. Well, not impossible, but you could do it with some really nice cooperation. If Marbazir, you know, migrated everything at the same time and like lifted all his pops, then technically that there is no nation on the map that is of Swebi culture. So that's when I could unite Swabia. That's when I could take that decision. But we were unable to cooperate that well, so to speak. You know, it happens. Like, it's going at speed 3. We're all new to the game, so can be a bit difficult to do all of that stuff very well. What else is there basically is oh yeah, so Cringer, who's on Chokia, I don't know. He eventually managed to form Saxonia, which was really good for him. I believe he's the only player of Germanic of the Horde, basically the German hordes, who managed to form another nation. So props to him. I think there were some other nations formed by other people, but I don't exactly remember who formed what. But yeah, there was another issue in this game though, and basically what ended up happening is, well, something really bad happened. And it's that I had to, well, not really terrible, but I was stuck in a war with the Burgundian Revolt, so I had to go there. And when we attacked another AI, which is the purple one to the right, I believe, Lemovia, I think it was getting really difficult to finish it off because I was stuck with my barbarian units on like having to finish off that Burgundian Revolt as well as helping Potato in this war. I mean, you know, eventually it went all right, but this war took us a very long time. Also, there's another thing to mention, very important thing to mention. In this game, I mainly decided to do no CB wars. Why did I do no CB wars? Well, actually, I rolled a 0 oratory skill ruler and also 0 in civic. So that's awful, but he did roll like a 5 or a 6 in religious, which isn't the max, by the way. Apparently you can even get crazy stats like 19 martial, I heard someone got. Not in this game though, I think, but in another game. So things can get really crazy potentially, but I got a really bad ruler, and spoiler alert, I'm only gonna get a better ruler in, well, I only got a better ruler in session 3. Essentially, this game had sessions of 3 hours, so, but on 3 different days. So day 1 was 3 hours, day 2 3 hours, day 3 also final day 3 hours. Just 3 days of gameplay, basically 3 hours each. So there was time for diplomacy in between if you wanted to do it, and there was indeed some diplomacy done. But yeah, I basically had to endure that ruler for a very long time. Again, only got rid of him somewhere mid session 3 basically, which was something that was very sad for me, you know, just having that ruler, like terrible ruler, stuck with you the whole game almost is just very bad for my nation, because I could have expanded so much more. I could have been doing better in tech, better in like a lot of things, right? Because if I had more oratory power, not only could I have migrated more, but I could have promoted more of my pops to citizens. If you promote to citizens now, that's really awesome because it increases your research speed, right? So research can be pretty awesome. Also, citizens are very nice for a score, by the way. Which is, the score, by the way, is in the top right, if you noticed. So currently I have 380 on screen, I think. I'm not sure exactly because it's a little bit delayed here, the video compared to what you see, I think. So yeah, that made me really sad having that ruler, but you know, and I also had some issues with Cringer at some point. He was afraid of me, so he started building fortresses on our borders. So then I started being afraid of him, so I stopped. I started to annoy his expansion paths, right? So I started mass migrating and like trying to cut off his expansion. I don't think he liked that, but also I didn't like that he took a lot of the Germanic region, right? Germania region. So why was I unhappy about that? Well, actually it's because your capital region gets a lot of bonuses to gives bonuses to loyalty, specifically lots of loyalty, province loyalty. So it's harder to get revolts if you have provinces in your capital region compared to, you know, other provinces. Now that now my idea here was every player owns his own region, but Cringer did not actually. Well, he eventually wanted to move from Germania region, but he did not. I mean, we didn't get the time to do it. But yeah, he actually expanded into Germania region during the game, so I thought that he was doing something anti-me, but fortunately, he was not. So that was a good thing. Now, somewhere during session 2 and 3, I decided to promote a lot of citizens, which increased my research speed massively. And in session 3 was when we decided to go ham on you know, like the other players, other teams. So we just didn't have a target. Rome was a consideration, but according to Diplo of our own players, I mean, Potato did the Diplo for us, and apparently the Rome had a really tough war, so, and they just recovered, fighting off against Egypt and the likes, so that was rough for them, but he, you know, Potato was convinced. I don't know who convinced him though, but he was convinced to attack the not the contenders, the Diadochi, right? Because go for Thrace basically, and we did that all together. We started migrating in session 3 and preparing for that possibility. So I started saving up oratory power, which was very good, by the way, that I got the great ruler. Well, I think he had 11 in oratory skill actually, which helped a lot, like make up the issues that I had in you know, day 1 and day 2. That was really tough for me, but 11 oratory skill, that was really great to basically get back into the game and start jump starting my nation with migration and research, you know, and that was great. But also, one more thing, that oratory power just allowed me to do so much more. Like, just look at how much I expanded after he died, and just my research started going massively up, like massively up. I was up to like at least 70% research efficiency at some point. I think I even went up to 80s or so, 80%, 90%, something like that, and it was starting to get really good, and I was by far the most advanced tribe in the game, and I wasn't as advanced as Rome or a particular tribe played by Spiffing in Ireland, who, by the way, unfortunately for Spiffing, he actually got surrounded in what was day 1, like basically day 1 war, and he just died because he was attacked by Egypt, by Seleucids, by Macedon and Thrace, and so he had to rig his country to die. So that was very sad for him. He had to be moved off. Who else had to be moved off? Well, actually, was one other player I remember, and was Shenrir, who was on Armenia. He was part of that war against Egypt as well. Not Egypt. Who was it? Against the Diadochi, I mean. He was on the side of Phrygia. I think it was. But he died to a civil war, right? Which was very sad for him. And then he was put on Pontus. And I believe he died to another revolt again. I'm not sure what he ended up playing after that. But he died to 2 revolts, I believe. Now, again, what did we do towards the last part of session 3? Well, as I was mentioning earlier, we started preparing for an invasion, and our target was not Rome, but it actually became Thrace. We were going for Byzantium. Now, well, Constantinople, Istanbul, whatever you want to call it, so to speak. Yeah, that's what we decided to do, and we all migrated there nearby. I made a misplay here, and I didn't migrate too many people, or I'm not sure if it was a misplay. May have been okay, you know, because I was also playing for score here, right? My score started going up very, very high, which was good for me. And since my score was increasing, I thought maybe, you know, I could get a decent score and actually be able to potentially win this game, right? Because, well, spoiler alert, well, not spoiler alert, it's sort of a spoiler, I guess, if you want to watch the Paradox of VODs, but actually got 3rd place on Verenia in terms of score, and I think score is a lot based on your pop happiness and type of pop as well, so citizens, I believe, give you a huge amount of score, and basically, I got 52% citizens in my nation, so the score was pretty good. I just promoted a lot of people to citizens, and yeah, that also increased my research. And I was one of the most advanced nations in the game as a tribe, you know, not as advanced as Rome or as the Irish tribe that Spiffing was playing, but you know, still pretty darn advanced as a tribe. You know, lots of advances. I ended up with like 5 or 6 advances, and my nearby tribes had like maybe 1 or 2 advances. And there was also Jetia, by the way, who was our basically that was Pravus, I think. He was moved to Jetia, and he is the one that Potato talked to about a potential invasion of Thrace. And now that didn't go too well for us. We actually got smacked quite a lot by Thrace. Sometimes it went well, other times it didn't. We eventually got pushed back, partially because I had to deal with some barbarians, which you can pay off, or you can fight, or you can make them settle, but you know, like, it was annoying for me to deal with. And I also had to, I got declared on by a lot of these AIs around me, and I had to deal with them, right? So I annexed them. I also annexed a lot of Denmark, which I believe gave me a lot more score as well, and that was very, very helpful as well. But yeah, it was just very annoying to deal with. Not just the war, but having to use my oratory power to keep promoting people to citizens, and then like dealing with barbarians, dealing with small AIs declaring on me. You know, it was a lot to take in at that point, but yeah, I got 3rd place. So 1st place was Rome, 2nd place Moria. So I'm pretty happy with how that went. But yeah, I mean, this went pretty well for us, surprisingly. Unfortunately, we only got 4th place, but I believe in the people's hearts, we did well. One potential MVP, I think, of the game is Enigmatic Rose, who actually held on very well on Sicily. She managed to hold off Heir of Carthage very well with inferior numbers, and obviously an inferior nation. She did get some help from Rome at some point, but again, she held up very well on her own, and even had some very nice battles against Carthage, so that was nice to see. Macedon did not get to expand very much because, yeah, like, you know, it had its issues. But overall, this was a very fun event to take part of. I'm very happy to have been part of it again, and I do hope there will be more like this in the future. Thank you for watching, guys. Don't forget to comment, rate, and subscribe. Follow me on social media. I'll see you all next time.